a lovely spring day when I took the three children to visit the cable ship Recorder. We found her lying at her berth in the lower reaches of the Thames, gleaming white and spotless in the sunshine, preparing to take on board new cable required for her repair work.
We were terribly excited. While waiting for the boat to take us over to the ship, we amused ourselves by crawling through wrapped rolls of cable lying on the quay. After that, we sat and watched ships going up and down the river. Chris, of course, soon spotted a man painting something high up on the mast. The next thing to catch our eye were flags flying from the other mast. We learned later that these were to warn ships that cable was being loaded. They also used these discs to warn small boats to keep away from the ship-to-shore cable.
Soon it was time for us to go down the slipway and get into the rowing boat which was to take us to the Recorder. The children quickly get into the boat, and we're on our way. With effortless ease, born of a lifetime of work upon the river, the waterman brought us to rest at the foot of the Recorder's companionway. The children needed no word from me. They were out of the boat and up the side in a flash. The captain, who had seen our arrival, was waiting to welcome us at the head of the companionway. I introduced the children to him in turn, and he told us that he was very happy to have us on board, and he hoped that we would enjoy our visit. A quick glance at the Recorder's notice board soon showed how lucky we were to have this chance of seeing her, for she was due to sail at noon the following day. Before setting out to explore the ship, the children had a hot drink and listened to the first officer telling them about the ship and the work they did.
I liked the first officer. He was a jolly good sport and awfully kind, too. He took us all over the place, showing us every sort of thing you could imagine. In one place we came across this brightly coloured bird, which belonged to a member of the crew. It was called Rainbow. You can guess why.
Yes, the first officer certainly did his stuff. Here you see him explaining how the vessel can be controlled and steered direct from the deck as well as from the bridge. From the deck they went forward to the bridge. When the children stepped through the doorway onto the bridge, they were amazed, not only at its size, but at its spotless and clean condition. Paint and metalwork gleamed and sparkled everywhere. The first officer showed them the engine control, similar to the one they saw on the decks below. The biggest thrill of the day for Chris came when he was allowed to hold the steering wheel. From the steering wheel and engine controls, the party move across the bridge to the echo sounder. The first officer opens the casing to show the moving parts inside and explains how, by sending an electrical impulse to the seabed and back to the instrument, the depth of water is accurately measured. From the echo sounding instrument, they move across the bridge to look at this sort of a windscreen wiper. The circular part of the window revolves at high speed. This causes any raindrops or seawater on it to be flung off, leaving a clear view. As you can see, the circular piece of glass gives a clearer view. This is because it's made of optical glass and is a great help in poor visibility and mist. From the bridge window, the first officer brings them across to that miracle of modern science, radar, the electric eye that can see and locate the unseeable. Briefly, the first officer explains how it works, and then, as it's an instrument made to be used by grown-ups, he has to lift Chris up to the eyepiece so that he can see the radar screen. And this is what Chris saw. A lot of odd-shaped white blotches. Meaningless to Chris and you as well, maybe, but to a trained radar operator, as simple and as clear as ABC. Anyway, Veronica enjoyed it. A moment ago, you saw this picturesque sailing barge as one of those flashing white blotches on the radar screen. Be that as it may, Chris, Jennifer, and little Veronica have decided to give it a friendly wave as it sailed proudly by.
As well as being shown many interesting things on board the recorder, we had time to play all sorts of games. We ran races along the deck, hide and seek, and did all sorts of dares. This is the ship's cook. He is Spanish and couldn't speak a word of English, but that didn't stop Chris from getting around him. He had a fine old romp around his cabin, as you can see. Chris, as usual, was up to some of his funny tricks. The crew take great pride in their ship. To them it is British, and so the best. And they work hard to keep it that way. On the boat deck we found a large open space. A perfect place to play leapfrog. And we did.
Second officer found Chris and Veronica leapfrogging on the boat deck and took them under his wing. Here he is doing his best to explain to them the mysteries of the A2 compass. A case of east is east and west is west, or something like that. But whatever it was, he soon had them all hard at it, taking bearings, sightings, and goodness knows only what else. In fact, I wouldn't have been the least bit surprised if they had told me they'd been boxing the compass. But my only fear was that they might break the wretched thing. But it's all's well that ends well, and no damage was done to either child or compass. From the boat deck, they make their way down to explore the lower depths of the recorder. Nothing seemed to daunt them. Look at the way little Veronica is going down that vertical ladder. None of that, you go first, Chris. Just tell her where it is, and she'll be there, and under her own steam. The place Chris, Jennifer, and Veronica are now in is called the buoy hole. The buoys are those large, pear-shaped objects. They're used to mark the position of the cables while repairs to them are being made, or when new sections of cable are laid. The buoys are made of light steel. They are airtight, and so float on the sea. They are painted bright red and white, which makes it easy to see them a long way off. Seemed a long way down into the buoy hole, but climbing up out of it seemed to them a lot further. However, with helping hands, they soon clambered up onto the deck above, ready to go on to the next interesting thing.
I peeped into the door of the wireless officer's room, but decided not to disturb him as he was working. Nearby we found the testing room. Chris and Veronica had disappeared, so I was left in peace and could pay attention to all that the engineer officer told me about the equipment. Several of the instruments were the same as we had seen at the cable station in Cornwall.
We didn't have to look far for Chris, and found him up to one of his games in a coil of rope. Flag signals read, "Taking on cable." And the cableway warning markers are out. The long coils of cable are unspooled in the sheds on the quayside and threaded through and over the pulley wheels on this pulley-way, and so travel at speed from shore to the ship and then on, down, and into her cable storage hole. You wouldn't think it looking at these pictures, but this is a very dirty job. The cable is covered with a black tarry waterproof substance, large bits of which fly off the rapidly moving cable and can soon mess your clothes up. In spite of my repeated warnings, the children were so fascinated watching the rapidly moving and snake-like movements of the cable that they kept on getting closer to it than they should have done. So each of them got their share of the tarry stuff on their clothes and hands. From the quayside, over the water, onto the ship, along the deck, and then through this doorway, and down through the opening in the deck to the cable hold below. That's the way the cable goes. The holes where the cable is stored are circular. In fact, for the men storing the cable, it's like working inside a large oil drum. Their job is to see that the coils of the cable lie neat and tidily against one another, without any bumps or bends. This is the eye or guide which gives a twist to the moving cable, so splaying it out into a nice large curve, which will then curve itself round and around on the floor of the hole, building up layer upon layer until the whole of this great depth is filled with closely packed cable. The men stowing the cable use their feet almost like hands to knock down and smooth the cable into position. Also, they must be as nimble as cats, not only to keep from being caught up in the coils of descending cables, but also they have to be very careful not to slip, as the cables are covered with a protective grease. The work goes on, coil after coil, non-stop, till the hold is full. Jennifer was patiently waiting for Chris and Veronica to hurry along, as I'd told her that I wanted her to see this, the Lucas sliding prong grapnel. The grapnel is the instrument used when a cable has to be recovered from the bottom of the sea. It's lowered to the seabed, then dragged along until one of the prongs attaches itself around the cable. Next, it is carefully hauled up, and so the cable is brought to the surface. These are the men who control and work the grapnel. The two wheel-like groove projections on the bowhead are the cable guides. The man in the bosun's chair being let down over the bows of the ship has an important as well as a difficult and dangerous job to do. He has to sit there with one hand on the grapnel chain while the recorder steams slowly along, dragging the grapnel head over the bed of the sea, seeking a contact. He can tell at once by the feel of his hand when a contact has been made with the cable. Strange as it may seem, no mechanical instrument has yet been devised to take over this vital work. This instrument is known as a dynameter, the scaled markings of which give readings that show the weight of strain bearing upon a cable as it's being lifted, a factor of vital importance when the ship is pitching and tossing in broken water. Having shown the children how he does his job, the contact man is hauled up again. This calls for a rapid and energetic bit of teamwork. It all looks so simple as seen here, but try to imagine what it must feel like stepping onto the bowhead in a mid-Atlantic swell. But time is getting on, and in answer to my call, the children make their way from the bows to wash and tidy up in readiness for their journey home. All good things must come to an end. So here we are, taking our leave of the captain of the cable ship, Recorder.